We have created a medical task force with the United Way, with Acadian Ambulance, with Love Our Community, with the Schumacher Foundation, and our nonprofit club to address issues with our COVID crisis and disparities in healthcare crisis.
Coronavirus infection is highly contagious, mostly transmitted by droplet infection. If you experience any flu-like symptoms, including muscle pains, fever, cough, shortness of breath, please stay home, quarantine yourself, and seek medical help.
It is still very important for us to avoid large crowds to decrease the spread of COVID-19. Despite being asymptomatic, if one person's infected, you could bring this home to your friends and family, thus propagating this pandemic in the community.
I would have to say that it's very important during our pandemic to be sure that all of us use our mask when we go outside, and we keep distance of about 6 feet or 2 arms together from each other.
There are several locations in the community that's providing free COVID testings. You only have to provide an ID, insurance, and even if you don't have insurance available, they still will do the testing for you at no cost.
Communities of color have been hit the hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, I've got some news for you. We can take care of you regardless of your ability to pay. We have first-class care that we can take care of you.
COVID-19 is not a hoax. We can stop it in its tracks. You must never go about your daily activities without wearing a mask. The mask, it will prevent the transmission and spread of this deadly virus.
I'm here to talk to you about protecting vulnerable members of the population. Think about helping them attend a faith-based service online. Other things that you can do are running errands for them, like grocery shopping or medicine pickup.
Scrubbing your hands, washing your hands needs to be done a minimum of 10, preferably 20 seconds. You can use soap, water, or hand sanitizer. Minimal 10, but preferably 20 seconds.
Now is not the time to put it in fate's hands. Be proactive. Let's everyone get tested.
Hello, Acadiana. I'm Dr. David Ollie, and welcome to this month's call-in show, live, the Ollie and Pat Lola Community Call-In Show. Welcome guests. You saw several of the announcements to begin with, and please know that at this moment we still are in a pandemic. We are all needing to make sure that we're wearing our masks, that we take our pledges, and that we wash our hands and we social distance as much as possible. Our pandemic is still going, and we're going to do our program today talking about cardiovascular disease and renal disease. Now, for the audience, we're going to go ahead on the stand and take our masks off at this time, as we are appropriately socially distanced, and we have all asymptomatic, and as physicians, we've recently been tested. So, audience, we're going to go ahead and take our mask off, and I'm going to introduce our crew here, as our topic today is about cardiology, it's about vascular disease, about kidney disease, about all of those specialists, and what we're terming a axis, in which we want to gain all of these treatments in a single place to do the best job for our patients. So I want to first go real quickly through our guests, and we will also then have several small quick lectures and then take our live call-in shows. First, I'd like to introduce on my right Dr. Raghu Patlola, my host, my assistant, my partner. And Raghu, please say hello to the audience, and we'll move on from there.
Hello, Acadiana.
Dr. Raghu Patlola, thank you again for being our host, and this is our second program for our callers in. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Max Lamarche. Now, we're going to give a little more introduction to Dr. Lamarche, as he's the dean of our nephrologists in the entire state. Dr. Lamarche, say hello, and we're going to come back to you in a bit.
Well, thank you very much, David and Dr. Ali and Dr. Patlola to allow me to be part of this show. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. LaMarche. And many of you in the audience are going to know that he's either trained you or had some effect of somebody in healthcare in this community going back over 40 years. Now, to his right is our youngest member. This is Dr. Chad Rossiter, who's the young nephrologist aboard here who trained through Dr. LaMarche. I've known Chad for a long time myself, and he's part of the new things going on, and we're going to talk about futuristic care. He's going to give us some basics on kidney disease in a second. So, Dr. Chad Rossiter, say hello and welcome to our program.
Thank you for inviting me onto the show, Dr. Ali. I think this is a great, going to make a great impact on our community to educate about chronic kidney disease and futuristic care.
Dr. Rossiter, I'm glad you brought up that word community because that is the title of this program. This is the Community Medical Update. Dr. Ali and Dr. Patlola's show to begin with, but this is really about the entire community. And then we're going to talk to you also about a club that we have in town. We're going to actually have many, many members over time, hopefully even the audience today. So can I have the first slide, please? And we're going to take our program from here. First slide, please. Guys, September is PAD Awareness Month. PAD is peripheral artery disease. Now, we're not going to focus only on that tonight, and what we're going to do, though, is talk about a portion of that. PAD means blood vessel disease outside of the heart. Okay, you can see there statistically it affects 20 million Americans a year. It is a huge problem. It's an epidemic in itself. There are over 200,000 amputations every year. And again, we need to do more awareness, and we will have a focused program on this next month. We've already had made the decision to do the renal work this month, and we're going to come back next month on the PAD. And I'd like to see that last statistic down there. 93% of the time we can actually save these limbs, and so what a big impact. Louisiana is number 1 or number 2 or number 49 or 50 in all of these problems that have to do with limb loss, kidney disease, amputations, cardiovascular disease. So we'll be on focus there next month. Next slide, please. Audience, I want you to look at this. This is a textbook. I want to tell a little story. Almost 14 years ago, my partner, Dr. Patlola at the time, came to me and he said, Dr. Ali, you do a lot of lectures, but you've never written a textbook. He said, why don't you write a textbook? I told him, Dr. Patlola, frankly, I can barely spell, so I don't think I can ever write a textbook. He said, I'd like to write a textbook with you. Now, that was 13 and a half years ago. I frankly forgot about that. That is human nature. I will tell you that 6 months ago, Dr. Patlola brought to me the textbook, all of those years. He gave that to me and he said, I have a surprise for you. He said, take it home and read it. I took it home and I read it. This is 6 months ago. I came back and I said, write us one more chapter, cardiovascular disease and COVID, because this came at the time of COVID. He wrote that chapter. We now are in the process of publishing this book. We said that this will be our gift to our patients, our communities. So I want Dr. Patlola to tell his story because he's put all this time and effort, and this will be something that we will be presenting to everyone here in the audience. You can see the Limb Salvage Club. This is who our main focus is and behind the program. And as I move my head a little bit, you can see limbsalvageclub.com. The limbsalvageclub.com. Please go to that site and you'll be able to get the access to the book. Dr. Patlola, please tell us about your passion in the book.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. I mean, this is actually a labor of love. As Dr. Ali mentioned, this has been going on for quite some time. The intention was to write a book in a simple English language so even a layman could read it, understand it. The entire purpose of this book is to you as a community member, as our patients, to be well prepared with any cardiovascular disease pertaining questions. This way, after reading the book, you should be able to choose the right physician, come well prepared for your first visit, subsequent visits, ask more questions, reasonable questions, and be actively participate in your care as a patient. And it'll be a great book, simple to read. It's a long book. It's almost about 500 pages, but it's very easy to read like a novel, and you'll be very well knowledged, empowered with the knowledge to make the right decisions for yourself and posting right questions to your physician and involving yourself in the care of your own body.
Dr. Palola, all I can tell you is I'm proud to be a part of this. You've done that work. It was a labor of love, and this is for the community, for our patients, for our club members, for our non-club members. Please, everyone in the audience, take that website down, contact us. You will be able to get this book. And again, a labor of love, and this is Dr. Patlola's work primarily. Next slide, please. To our audience, also through the club, we have celebrated Achievement Award winners in our community. And I want you to look at those names real quickly. And there's a gentleman there named Chris Hebert, who is one of the leading techs in the country. He has trained more than 4,000 people. He received one of our Achievements Award. You can see Dr. Ernest Kinchin, over 50 years, the trailblazer, one of the first African Americans to become general surgeon, and he stayed in this community for 50 years. Can I have the slide, please? Also, you can see Dr. Ray Audemont, legendary leader of ULL, put us on the map for all of those years. He has just passed away. We honored him beforehand. You can see Dr. Gail Poirier, the dean of the nursing school. She put this is one of the top 5 nursing schools in the country. Red Laurel, our hero in fitness, maybe our best known individual and achiever in Lafayette. Dr. Kip Schumacher, who set a standard in emergency room care, hospital ownerships. His company has led the world in that aspect, and he's from right here. And Keith and Ginger Myers, they are with Louisiana Healthcare Group, and they have the 3rd largest healthcare group in the entire country. These are the kinds of people we have here that we have given achievement awards to. Now I'll go you to the very first top, and you will see our first Achievement Award winner was Dr. Max LaMarche and his wife, Marcia LaMarche. So Dr. LaMarche, we're honored to have you here. He's the first foreign graduate to enter the LSU residency program. He is the first foreign medical graduate also to become the first chief resident. Now we're going back into the 70s. First foreign medical graduate to be recognized with honors in the LSU Medical School. What a great gift to the state was Dr. Max LaMarche. He's the chief of medicine and director of the internal medicine program at LSU and UMC here in town for over 30 years. He has literally trained most people in this area and most people across the country in some way or the other, at least in this region. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. He's been the president of the Lafayette Medical Society, the board of the entire state society during Katrina, and that's 15 years ago. And what a devastating thing we've just seen, and our prayers go to our brothers and our families in Lake Charles. He provided hemodialysis for 6 to 8 weeks consecutively there, free of charge as I understand it. He's always done this kind of thing. Been on the board for dozens of philanthropic community organizations. He's literally trained thousands of students, residents at LSU. Next slide, please. Founder, leader of the largest dialysis group in this state, and this has been for over 30 years. These are just a couple of the hundreds of statements about him. The most humble and kind man there is, no question about that. A role model for many physicians. Matter of fact, a role model for all physicians and people in our community. He is definitely the commander-in-chief of healthcare in Acadiana, and we're honored to have him. And please, next slide, please. And also his wonderful wife, Marcia, who quite frankly has been on every one of these activities with him, philanthropic activities, charity work in town. She's one of the greatest. And Marcia, I'm sure you're watching tonight, and we love you. And so with that, what I would like to do is be honored, and I would like to ask Dr. LaMarche to make a couple of comments telling us, my goodness, why did he go into nephrology all those years ago when it was there was a non-existent subject? He stayed here and led this state in nephrology in our community. I wanted to work with him more and more for over 30 years, and we're kicking it off tonight by starting this renal vascular access, and this will be a goal and something that will be something I've looked forward to also. Dr. LaMarche, please address our audience.
Thank you very much, David. I believe that the main reason for me to become a nephrologist was when we moved to Louisiana in 1974, my wife and I started noticing the great amount of brothers and sisters that had diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and they didn't have any end product of what happened with most of those patients. Most of those patients developed kidney failure. There were not available dialysis. There was no available transplantation. And I decided to go to LSU Medical School in New Orleans and start teaching there, became a fellow, and became specialized in critical care and hypertension. And after that, I said, well, I'm going to have to go back to my origin. And my origin was Lafayette. I tried to help my people in Lafayette because, as David had mentioned, Louisiana is one of the states that have more cases of obesity, diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia than take to you to coronary artery disease, stroke, and peripheral vascular disease.
Well, Dr. Marche, you've been a gift to our community. You've been a gift to me. You're one of the first physicians that I met 31 years ago when I came to Lafayette. Always had a dream to work closer. And so I'm feeling very good about all this. Now, with that said, Dr. Rossler, I'm going to ask you now to make a comment or two, because I know you trained under Dr. LaMarche, and then I'm going to ask you to do a presentation to our audience about what is kidney disease real quickly, set the groundwork, and then we're going to start taking some questions. So Dr. Chad Rossler, please.
Yeah, so Dr. LaMarche has impacted this community in a great way. He's the reason I'm a nephrologist today, otherwise I would just be an ER doctor. So he was a mentor, still is to this day, and has trained so many physicians in the area, and is just the most kind-hearted guy you'll ever meet. So with that said, I went into nephrology and love every bit of it ever since. So I'm going to be talking today about chronic kidney disease, the impact of chronic kidney disease on our population, especially here in Louisiana. We need to know what the kidneys do, what is kidney disease, what's the cause, the symptoms, and the treatments that are available for chronic kidney disease. Next slide. So the kidneys perform the following functions. Kidneys basically filter and clean your blood. They work 24 hours a day. They're a vital organ, as if, the same as a heart, liver, lung. You have to have your kidneys in order to sustain life. They participate in removal of drugs as well as metabolism, maintain your body fluids and electrolytes such as your salt level, your potassium, your magnesium, regulate the blood pressure and control production of red blood cells, and as well as activation of vitamin D. So what is kidney disease? Kidney disease is also known as a silent disease. It's basically where we have a decrease in renal function or anatomical abnormality with our kidneys that occurs, and usually it's asymptomatic in our patients. It's picked up by a random blood test or urine screen that's usually done by the primary care physician.
Tell them next.
So how often do we see chronic kidney disease? Is it in our community? Yes. About 15% of U.S. citizens have, or U.S. Citizens, 37 million people are impacted with chronic kidney disease. That's about 9 out of 10 actually don't even know they have the disease, and 1 out of 2 with chronic, progressive, advanced chronic kidney disease with very little function left still did not know they had chronic kidney disease. So 1 out of 7 people are impacted with chronic kidney disease. So this is a little bit older reference here, but I like how it put the African American population up there as well as the Hispanics. Since then, the numbers have changed a little bit, with 1.6 with Hispanics and up to 4, closer to 4 with the African Americans. 1 in 3 patients with diabetes and 1 in 5 with hypertension are impacted with chronic kidney disease. So let's talk about the African American disparities in healthcare. They're 3 times more likely, up to 4 times, to present with advanced CKD and progress all the way to end-stage renal disease. If they have hypertension, that even puts them in a higher risk bracket. Approximately 500,000 patients with chronic kidney disease in Louisiana, 138,000 of the African American population occupy that number. So 460,000, close to half a million with CKD. 10,833 are currently on dialysis, or were with the last numbers done here. We done over 1,800 kidney transplants that are still active in the state. Last year, 400 transplants were done here, And Arkansas is actually ranked number 48, followed by Louisiana and Mississippi, with deaths per 100,000 population. We have 1,200 deaths in 2018 with chronic kidney disease. So when we look at the economics of chronic kidney disease, it has basically taken a toll on our Medicare system and our taxpayer dollars. If a patient's on dialysis, it takes about $97,000 a year to cover the fees. Whereas if a patient gets a kidney transplant, the kidney transplant will pay for itself within 13 to 14 months. Over the years, the costs continue to escalate. And we're talking over $50 billion with a patient that's over 65 years old with end-stage renal disease and money. So it makes a huge impact. So what are our risk factors? Who gets chronic kidney disease? There's some things that we can modify to prevent us from developing chronic kidney disease or control the progression of it. Diabetes is a good example. Weight loss and controlling the diabetes, keeping the A1C less than 7. Hypertension, low sodium diet. Once again, go back to weight loss, healthy diet. Frequent NSAID use. This is ibuprofen, Aleve, Motrin. Using those on a daily basis can cause recurrent kidney injury and lead to chronic kidney disease. Other things such as tobacco smoking, as well as non-modifiable risk factors, age, race, sex, and family history that we can't control there. So what are our symptoms for chronic kidney disease? Like I mentioned earlier, most of the time patients present with chronic kidney disease and never knew they had it. When I see them in clinic, they say, well, doc, I don't have any symptoms. And this is a silent disease. We usually don't develop symptoms until our renal function gets very, very suppressed. At that point, when we do see those patients, they're close to dialysis usually, a stage 4/stage 5 needing dialysis. A lot of times they'll present with an altered metal taste, a metallic taste in their mouth, itching, nausea, vomiting, short of breath, swelling of the lower extremities. But in most cases, when they present in an earlier stage, they have no symptoms associated with their chronic kidney disease. So now we're going to go into the cardiovascular renal axis.
Yeah. Dr. Pat Lola, Dr. Rossiter, thank you very much. That's very nice basic things about the kidney disease. And to our audience, you heard this is a silent disease. High blood pressure, diabetes, silent kidney disease. This is there, it's in our community, and we're going to investigate it more. And what is the effects on the cardiovascular system? Dr. Pat Lola, I'm going to ask you to take over from there and tell us your experiences there, because we've dealt from the heart and the blood vessels for many years. We know these kidneys are a part of the problem, and we're trying to wrap our arms around all of this in one axis, one place, best for the patients, best for costs, best for clinical results. Dr. Pat Lola.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. So as we just heard, the kidney and the heart are quite interrelated. There's a big chance of having heart disease or cardiovascular disease if you have a kidney disease. Can I have my first slide, please?
Slide, please.
So these are mind-boggling numbers. We call it as axis of evil: high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, and smoking. So people with the kidney disease that are very high risk of developing heart disease. Actually, if you look at the numbers in people who are 65 years and older with kidney disease, almost 70% of these people have cardiovascular disease. And compared to 35% of the people who do not have kidney disease, which is twice as high. Atherosclerotic heart disease, which simply means that clogging of the arteries in the neck, in the heart, in the legs, in the kidneys, mostly caused by cholesterol plaque buildup, accounts for 40% of the people in patients over 65 years of age with kidney disease. And also the important thing what we see on a daily basis is that people who undergo cardiovascular procedures by me and Dr. Ali, a majority of these patients, more than 40% of the people, have chronic kidney disease, which makes the treatment kind of complicated. Next slide, please. If you look at this simple slide, it's a pie diagram, what we call it as the major cause of death in people with the kidney disease, almost 40% is related to heart attacks. Blockage in the heart arteries is a major cause of death in these people. Almost 40% of the people die from heart disease. 40% of the people with the kidney disease die from heart disease. And also about nearly 20% of the people also have PAD, or a peripheral artery disease, and stroke, which are quite high number, causing major mortality and morbidity. Next slide, please. Now again, as we just mentioned, the axis of evil, high blood pressure, diabetes, and being obese in conjunction with smoking. All of these are interrelated, meaning if you have high blood pressure, there's a big chance you'll have diabetes, and vice versa. And all of these people tend to be obese as well. And all of these three conditions in conjunction with smoking, with or without smoking, can cause chronic kidney disease, and which can predispose you to have peripheral artery disease and cardiovascular disease. All are interconnected and interlinked. Next slide, please. No, these are some mind-boggling numbers. Almost about more than 2 million people in the worldwide do have some kind of kidney disease requiring dialysis or requiring a kidney transplantation. Almost about 10% of the people worldwide are affected by kidney disease, and 25% of the patients with the chronic disease, with a kidney disease, also have a peripheral artery disease, which is blockages in the legs or the neck causing strokes. And more than 35% of the people who are on dialysis have almost nearly 40% risk of dying from this disease process. There's a simple test which we commonly implement, which is also called as a gatekeeper test. It's called as an ABI, ankle brachial index. Simple test wherein we check the blood pressure in the arm and the ankle, get a ratio. The normal ratio is 1. The systolic blood pressure in the arm divided by the systolic blood pressure of the ankle should be 1. Anything less than 1 is an indication that the person or the patient has PAD, peripheral artery disease, which require further investigation, not just for the circulation of the legs, but also in the heart as well as the carotids, going circulation to the brain.
So, Dr. Patalolo, those are obviously staggering numbers. It shows the association of the two, from the kidneys to the heart to the peripheral vascular disease. And Dr. LaMarche, it looks like we need to be working together. As you can see, we've known this forever. All of my patients had kidney disease, and all of your patients had heart and vascular disease. So we're at the right table at this time. Do you agree?
I agree 100% with you, David. I believe that the main focus that we had to concentrate on is the fact that hypertension and diabetes are the same disease. All of them affect all the organs. And all the organs mean all the vascular system in the body, including the brain, the carotid artery, the peripheral vascular disease, the coronary disease, the kidney disease. All of that interact with each other and produce progressive kidney failure in need of dialysis. Because of that, cardiovascular groups, cardiologists, and nephrologists should always work together, and will be an honor to work with all of you, because all of you work for the community.
And we work for the patient, the community, and we are now focused. The last season of my work here is going to be with you, and I think that we're going to do good things in this community, because it's really never been done in any community where we have each of these specialists who come out of their own silo and they work together in a single place with a single focus, because these are so interconnected. So we're halfway through our program, and in the audience we have some people who are calling in right now, and so please call in the rest of this show. We're going to deal with any kind of questions that you have. Can we have our first caller, please? Thank you. Thank you, caller. There's our live call-in number. Let's hear the first call, please. Can we have the first call, please? While we're waiting, guys, it's certainly an honor to be able to have my three associates with me on my side here, because we've worked together, not intimately as we should have over these 30 years for Dr. Patalolo, but and Dr. LaMarche, but from this point on, we're making a statement on this program that we are going to be working closer together, and this CVRA, cardiovascular renal access, is frankly a condition that we're naming at this particular time. Can you?
Just like blockages in the legs, can the arteries to the kidneys have the same kind of blockages?
Okay, to the audience, if you didn't hear that question, this question is very pertinent. The question was, can there be blockages to the arteries in the kidneys, just like the arteries to the legs? And the answer is yes. And as a matter of fact, we have one of the specialists at that, who is Dr. Pat Lola, on this subject, and this is called renal artery stenosis. And that renal artery can be affected, and it affects the kidney, the blood pressure, etc. So I'm going to ask us to put up a quick video, and I'm going to ask Dr. Pat Lola to take it from here on blockages to the kidney artery. Let's have the first slide, please, and Dr. Pat Lola.
Absolutely, caller. So this blockage in the kidney arteries can happen like any other artery in the human body. It's mostly because of the cholesterol fat buildup in the inside of the arteries, which becomes solidified and decreases the blood supply to the kidneys. And once the blood supply to the kidneys goes down, there's a variety of chemical system which gets activated and which can cause high blood pressure. As you see in this video, there's a blockage in the kidney which you're trying to open up with the balloon. The problem with this kidney artery blockages are that they're like fibrous tissue and they don't hold it together, so we have to put in a stent. Like in this case, after the stent, you can see that we have restored the blood supply to the kidneys. And this procedure is quite simple. We do it from the groin. It doesn't require any cut down or any anesthesia. It's a very simple procedure done under local anesthesia, and the results are quite durable.
So this is similar to a blockage anywhere else, whether it be the heart or the arteries of the legs fixed with a stent. Now we have another video because there's another new condition, and I want to ask Dr. Pat Lola also to explain, and this is some of the nervous tissue or nerve tissue in the renal artery system that may cause high blood pressure. Can you tell us about this, Dr. Pat Lola?
Yeah, this is called as renal artery denervation, and myself and my senior partner, Dr. Ali, were actively involved in this a few years back. This is the catheter which is advanced into the renal artery. It's a radiofrequency catheter wherein we deliver the microwavable energy. The whole purpose of this is to burn and destroy the nerves outside of the artery, meaning the energy is transmitted from the interior of the renal arteries to the surface of the renal arteries. The purpose of this is to burn those sympathetic nerves and disconnect the connection between the brain and the kidneys, and this way it will help in better control of the blood pressures. However, this technology is still used very commonly in Europe. We are still awaiting for large clinical trials in this country to prove the safety and efficacy of this technique. If this gets approved, it will be used only in people with resistant hypertension, meaning people who require 5+ blood pressure medications, blood pressure still not being controlled, the top number more than 180 millimeters mercury, with evidence of an end organ damage like brain, kidneys, etc. that could be used. But right now it's still investigational, not ready for prime time use yet.
So I hope our nephrologists are in agreement here. If we can make blood pressure control better, that's going to stop our chronic kidney disease in its tracks. We have another caller, so we're starting to have some callers come in. And next caller, please. Can we have the next caller, please? Mm-hmm.
I think your club is great. How can someone join?
Our caller is calling about the club. She thinks it's great. Well, we think it's great too. And how can you join? Well, the answer is this club was created about 18 months ago. It's a nonprofit club here in town in which we do medical work. We do community services of all types, especially with COVID. And here you can see the logo, and you can see the website there. And I would invite anyone to go ahead and contact this, because anyone can join. You don't have to be in healthcare. This is actually a free service. There is no cost to it. You can be a club member, and we share in various volunteer work. We have dinners once we get through COVID. We have a lot of educational materials. We do volunteer service in the community. We work in the schools. We work with ULL and other foundations in town. So that is our club, a nonprofit club. We have over 3,000 members, and we're looking for more. And you call, become a member, get the textbook, and join us. Thank you very much for that call. That is our club. We have another call, please, and this is another call in, please.
Hi, this question is for Dr. LaMarche. I do have high blood pressure. I was wondering if it's associated with renal disease and how does it happen?
Okay, Dr. LaMarche,
Well, hypertension is one of the major causes of cardiovascular disease, peripheral vascular disease. When it's associated with diabetes and hyperlipidemia, then the problem is compound or multiplied. As Dr. Rossiter mentioned earlier, most of the problem with hypertension occur in the kidney. And the kidney secretes some neurohormones called renal angiotensin system, in which produce vasoconstriction of the intraglomerular vessels that produce the excretion of aldosterone and other mineralocorticoids hormones that produce then hypertension. Because of that, hypertension has a lot of different causes. The most important one is, of course, renal disease. And yes, it's a disease that could be treated, but cannot be prevented. But you could live a normal life with hypertension, and you could avoid coronary artery disease, PAD, and probably myocardial infarction and stroke.
Okay. Dr. Marshall, I want to ask you a question. I'm also going to ask Dr. Rossiter to also chime in. We talked a little bit about the transplants a while ago. Now, I happened to, in my residency, start doing transplants. This was almost 40 years ago myself. And Dr. LaMarche certainly has seen that come into fruition. And I know that there's smaller, better, newer ways to do transplantation nowadays that makes it effective, less cost, patients go home. And so comments real quickly on transplantation and what you see there. Dr. LaMarche and then Dr. Rossiter.
Well, no question about transplantation, as Dr. Rossiter mentioned earlier, equal the amount of money spent on a daily basis on dialysis. In 14 to 16 months, the amount of money that is spent on each patient in dialysis between $90,000 to $100,000 a year is recouped with one transplant. Transplant for me is the ideal way in which we could bring a patient with chronic kidney disease or end-stage renal disease to a better, proper life, because it restores again the hormonal problems of the kidney, avoid metabolic bone disease, may have a double even transplant, kidney and diabetes at the same time, and cure your diabetes and your kidney disease. Because of that, transplantation was what I really liked when I went to medical school in LSU and decided to become a transplant aficionado, let's call it, and became head of the transplant program. And we were the only center in Louisiana, together with Shreveport, that performed transplant. Now we have other centers, and we're happy to say that yes, the way that transplant is done now is very different than the way it used to be before. But let me let you know that we don't have enough donors. We have a lot of recipients, not enough donors. I will suggest to all of you to please put in your license plate and your license driver's license that you want to be a donor.
Okay. Dr. Rossiter, real quickly, tell us real quickly how you can work a patient up for dialysis. How do you make that decision? Because I can see more and more of that needed, and I believe our futuristic dialysis units and chronic kidney care is going to take that into consideration. Tell us about that.
Yes, so just to comment on the kidney transplant, we try to get kidney transplant prior to dialysis if we can, and if on dialysis, we still work them in the system to get a kidney transplant. If a patient is having uremic symptoms, if a patient GFR or glomerular filtration rate drops below 15, their potassium is uncontrolled, their acidosis is uncontrolled, they have too much fluid on board, then that's when we initiate hemodialysis. Dialysis is usually first initiated with a catheter. With a futuristic model that I propose would be taking the home first program and getting these patients early education, empowering the patients early on to try to prevent them from crashing into the hospital needing emergent renal replacement therapy. I have one that came in this morning at 2 o'clock that needed emergent renal replacement therapy. Happens every day. If we can get them and educate them early on, if we get early referrals from their primary care when their renal function starts declining, then maybe we can slow down the progression and even prevent end-stage renal disease on these patients where they never need dialysis. Some of the new concepts I believe in is more of a hands-on approach. Bring them in, have an open door policy with your dietitian in a nutrition room, show them, educate them what they do, what they don't need to eat, show them models what different accesses look like, from a hemodialysis temporary catheter to a tunnel catheter, how it sits on the right side of their heart, and how they do not want that catheter. So it's very important they go get their access created early on. And we assign them an access coordinator at the appropriate interval to go ahead and watch them through the process to educate them, make the right decision whether it's a HD, fistula, or a PD route. Evaluate their home settings to see if they can even do dialysis at home. There are some limitations to doing home dialysis, from not having the proper storage space to the room, not having somebody to assist you, and just the fact that patients are scared to cannulate or stick themselves with a needle, and or don't want to be left there just in case something was to happen. The new self-care area in a center that we propose would be anytime dialysis. Come in, receive your hemodialysis. You schedule it on an app before you arrive, and you get to come in, do dialysis. There's supplies there at the center, no storing needed. There's a tech there if you needed assistance with your blood pressure if it did drop, or cannulation of your access. Lastly, for the kidney donors that we still, even though you're on dialysis, we're trying to get you a kidney donation. We've created an app now that's going to link donors with people who are seeking kidney transplants and try to help out this process. Last year, a little over 400 in Louisiana. In my fellowship at Houston Methodist, we did 200 in that one hospital alone. So we need to do more kidney transplants in this state, get more people off of dialysis, and try to do more education, more preventative care for our community, and really reach out and try to make an impact.
You know, Drs. Rossiter and Dr. LaMarche, when I'm hearing that, and I think Dr. Pat Lowell will probably agree, in our field, cardiovascular field, in the last 5 or 6 years, we have been able to do more things as an outpatient, getting our patients home quicker. We have seen a revolution in what we do in the way we treat hearts and limb salvage and those kind of things. And I'm sensing that more and more of that is now coming in the hemodialysis and the chronic kidney disease realm because of better results, the costs, the people are going to like it. And so I'm seeing that is analogous to what we have seen in cardiovascular, and we're going to put those together, and that's going to do a good job, I believe, for our patients, costing the country less, better clinical results, people are more at home, and we will be able to do this job together. We have another caller, please. Can I have a caller on line 1, please? Can we have the caller, please?
Okay. I've heard dialysis patients will not need surgical arm grafts in the future, and the access could be made without any incisions. How is that possible?
Okay, this question falls in line with what we just talked about, things that are changing in our field and changing in dialysis field. So I tell you what, this has to do with the creation of the surgery grafts in the past, which I've spent 3 decades doing, which are now transitioning to the same things that we do without incisions, and that is through needle sticks and that sort of thing. So I've got a video on that. Can we bring up that video? And I want to talk through that video because this is something that we're going to be able to do in a very short period of time. Now what you're seeing is an arm and a catheter about the size of a small ink pen is placed in the artery and vein. It is taken down to the mid-forearm. Now, prior to this, I had to do surgery to expose those with incisions. These catheters then align each other in the mid-forearm, and there's a radio frequency that is connected between magnets, and it actually makes an incision between the artery and the vein. We used to have to cut down. I had to open them up. I had to go ahead and sew them in together or put a bypass graft. This creates this loop here, which now allows the dialysis access to be done without an incision and also without any grafts. I'm going to ask you to play that video again. It's kind of short, and I want to continue starting from the beginning. 2 catheters placed, needle stick, numbing shot, no incision. We take it down to the mid-forearm, we take a picture, we have ultrasounds already, We've identified where we're going to sew these two together. And it's actually done with magnets and energy by radio frequency. We've basically sewn these together without an incision. This is done with the patient awake with numbing shots. These procedures are very quick. There is no foreign bodies, no grafts, no infection. These things will grow over time. They're easier accessible for the patients. Less times they have to go into the hospital. And so, guys, we're among the first in this state and even in the country to do this procedure. We'll be doing several of them this week. This technology was actually developed where you trained there in Houston by an old cardiac surgeon friend of mine, Billy, who I think that you will know. And so this is coming nationwide. It's in our community at this particular point. This will be performed not only by me as a surgeon, but also by Dr. Pat Lola, by Dr. Rossiter. In other words, we now will be able to do this without surgery, without incisions, and it's a dramatic change. We're looking forward to it. Falls in suit with everything along.
And how we can use them 6 weeks out versus waiting that 13-week period.
So correct. He's mentioned we can use them quicker, they're simpler, they're safer, less complications, less infection, and so this is a real change. We have another caller, please. Can we have a caller on the phone, please? And
Okay, you ready for me?
yes. Mm-hmm.
Good evening. I've heard kidney transplants are now much simpler today than in the past. How is the decision made on who gets a kidney transplant today?
Thank you for the caller. We had a question that answered some of that. I'm going to ask Dr. Rossiter and Dr. LaMarche to fill in a little bit along those lines, anything that we left out a while ago. And to the audience, we still have a few minutes, so let's please call in. Let's answer the one on the transplant and be finished with it. Anything new there, guys?
Yes, so at Houston Methodist, way we did it there, we did 200 a year, 400 while I was there in training, and the process was basically we took into account the prior medical history of the patient, the age of the patient, and then everything all the way down from psychiatric issues all the way down to financial issues, whether they're going to be able to pay for their immunosuppression when they're post-transplant. Transplants nowadays, they're walking out of the hospital in 3 days. They're not staying in there a long time. They're on their feet, walking out in 3 days. So we want to pick healthy candidates. If a patient needs a kidney, and as Dr. LaMarche mentioned earlier, they have diabetes, sometimes those patients will get a pancreas with a kidney, and they'll cure their diabetes right then and there. The allocation process is a little tricky. Somebody who is 75 years old isn't going to go in front of somebody who is 18 necessarily. They're going to likely more likely to give an 18-year-old a kidney transplant before they give a 75-year-old a kidney transplant. But at the same time, you will have to undergo cardiovascular studies to make sure your heart can handle the can handle the transplant and the surgery. It's very hard on your body, as well as seeing if you have antibodies. So if you've had a lot of blood transfusions in the past, it's going to put you at a higher risk of rejecting that kidney. And if you've been non-compliant with medications. So it goes back to look at your medical history too, to see if you had a period where you were non-compliant versus you have a patient that's very compliant. They're going to pick the more healthier, compliant patient, less antibodies to go for that kidney.
Dr. LaMarche, anything to add to that, or it's pretty complete?
Well, I agree 100% with Dr. Rossiter mentioned. The only thing I will have to say that is no bias in who get or who get not a kidney transplant. I want to be sure that our brothers and sisters are less likely to get a kidney because we are less likely to donate a kidney. And there is more racist people and different races than all Afro-American that donate kidney, that are willing to give kidneys. The minority in this country are less likely to donate kidney, and because of that, the genetic predisposition for kidney disease is higher on us. But we are less likely to donate the kidney because we don't have donors. We encourage everybody to try to donate. And by the way, not everybody is a candidate for the kidney transplant. As Dr. Rossiter well mentioned, depend on a lot of factors. And the most important one of all is to be compliant. Anybody who had renal disease that needs on dialysis, the first thing we're going to look if the patient had missed any treatment, if he had missed whatever the nurse or the doctor had prescribed to them. If that patient is going to be an incompetent patient mental-wise, or a severe end-stage renal heart disease or any type of cancer, of course mortality is very high, and those patients probably will get that.
I just have one more thing to add to that, right, real quick. That's a cadaver kidney I was mentioning. If you have somebody that wants to donate a kidney to you and they're not your blood type, they don't match you, that's fine. We have a swap program where they will still get a donated kidney and you will still get the kidney or a kidney. So it may take 6, 8, 12 people to make that happen, but you will walk out of the hospital the same day as the other person and get a kidney transplant. So to try to find a donor first is the best speedy way to get a kidney transplant.
Guys, I want to ask Dr. Patlola a question because something is important I think that we need to bring out here. In the past, we have had a lot of patients lose their limbs, lose their legs because it was thought that they couldn't have an angiogram, they couldn't have their limbs saved because they would go on dialysis. What I would like him to address is what we call CO2 angiography. In this way, we can save legs and not injure the kidneys one bit, no stress, as an outpatient. This has been also a major change. Dr. Patlola, you've done a lot of work with CO2 angiography. Give us something quick on that.
Thank you, Dr. Ali. Over 100 years, the only way to image an artery in the human body was to inject iodine, contrast, which is very toxic to the kidneys. It's an incremental destruction to the kidneys. Healthy kidneys, unhealthy kidneys, it doesn't matter. Every time you're exposed to the contrast, the risk of kidney damage. So over the last few years, we have embarked on this new technology, which is called the CO2, carbon dioxide angiography. It's a common gas freely available in the environment and the human body itself. It comes in small canisters. We inject into the arteries and take pictures, and with special imaging, which is called as DHA, digital subtraction angiography, and then the treatment will follow, including balloons, stents, etc. But the only thing, the key to this is that this gas can only be used in imaging the arteries and treating the arteries below your rib cage, meaning kidneys, legs could be easily be treated, but above in the chest and above the chest, we prefer not to use them because of a dangerous condition it can cause called as a vapor lock, which is because gas is buoyant. So this is a very simple, safe technique or technology which we been using in our practice, especially in our outpatient cath lab settings at Ali and Pallola Medical Center and Arise Vascular. This is a very common mode or modality of taking pictures and treating the patient in a safe and effective way with absolutely no toxic effect on the kidneys.
That is very important because it's been one of the major changes I've seen in the last few years. And from that very first slide where we were talked about a 93% limb salvage rate, this even allows us to salvage more. So there's no reason that people should not have angiograms, have pictures taken. This way we can save many, many more legs. And next month we will do an entire 30-minute program on PAD, on venous disease, those kinds of things that actually affect the blood vessels. What I'd like to do at this point is we're coming to the very end of the program, and what I'd like to do is for us to go ahead and put up our conclusion slide, our summary slide if we could. I'd like to make a few comments, and I would also certainly like to thank Dr. Patlola. Dr. LaMarche, has been an honor, and Dr. Chad Rossiter. Our goal here is for us four physicians to take leaderships in the treatment of cardiac, vascular, renal, kidney. We'll go even one step further, even limb salvage with work on hyperbaric oxygen, wound care. The incidence of limb loss and amputation in a chronic kidney patient is just too high. It needs all of us really working together. So if I can have the conclusion slide here, well, I'm going to go ahead and from the standpoint here, you can see our next show is going to be on October the 7th. And at that point, we will go ahead and we will deal with PAD and in all of those aspects. And audience, again, go to our limbsalvage.com. Here you go. You can see where that is. You will be able to join the club, complimentary, cost you nothing, enjoy the education, and obtain the textbook. To be honest with you, that was written primarily by Dr. Patlola, a work of art and from his heart to this community. This is our community. So Dr. Patlola, please give a last thought, and the same with Dr. LaMarche.
Absolutely. Again, this was a very good a meaningful evening to talk about the evil of access, hypertension, diabetes, blood pressure. And I think we had all these experts talking about the interlinking between the highly complex disease causing highest risk of death and morbidity in our community. It was very informative.